What's going on, everybody, and welcome to Legit Fishing. Hey, I hope everybody's having a good day. My name is Dustin Holland. Welcome to Legit Fishing. Today we're going to talk about electronics. We're going to talk about graphs, depth finders, whatever you want to call them. But that's what we're going to go over. I'm going to show you a few of my favorite ones. I have Humminbird, Lowrance. I've got a Garmin and a Humminbird on the front deck of my boat. So I've got one of everything, and we're going to go over those. I'm going to show you what I like about each unit, what I don't like about each unit, and what I feel each unit is best served for. I'm going to bring y'all around, let y'all see my two screens right here at the console, and we're going to talk about mapping to start with. Alright, we're going to look at the different mapping setups between the Humminbird Helix Gen 4 and the Lowrance HDS 12 Gen 3. Both of these are 12-inch units, and I have transducers for both of these, but I use them for completely different things most of the time. So if you look at this one, this is Carter's Lake. This is close. This is my home lake. This is where I fish more than anywhere else. And we're looking at the same area of the lake. Now, the Lowrance is turned a little different than the Humminbird, but there's two islands here. There's a big island here and the small island here. Same on the Humminbird. Now, I have Lake Master Southeast card in the Humminbird. I have the Navionics C-Map chip in the Lowrance. And you can see both have extreme amounts of detail when it comes to your topographic part of the map, where it shows all of your, elevation changes and everything in the lake. And they both have the ability to highlight different depth ranges. Both of these are currently set at 0 degree or 0 depth water offset. And you can see on the Lowrance, you've got some red areas. The red is, I've got it set to 4 foot and less on both units. So the red on the Humminbird currently shows 4 feet or less water. Green, I believe, is from 12 to 4 is how I have that set up. And this one's a little different. But if you notice, this shows, in fact, that this is an island. It's just really shallow water in between these 2 points. On the Lowrance, it shows it as being a solid piece of land. And that is one of the biggest differences between the two. I will say this, I just got back from a trip to Eufaula, and while I was running down the lake, I had both of these units with the map pulled up because it was a lake that I'm unfamiliar with. And I kind of wanted to see some of the differences between the Humminbird and the Lowrance. To me, the mapping on the Humminbird, at Eufaula at least, was a lot more accurate than the mapping from the Navionics and Lowrance. All of the buoy markers, the channel markers, everything on the Humminbird was almost identical and exact. If it said that there was a red buoy marker in this place and a green one in this place, the Humminbird was almost dead on with that. The Lowrance, while it showed the channel and everything pretty well. There were a few, you know, differences between what the Humminbird showed and what the Lowrance showed. I do have the Humminbird GPS puck mounted right behind, kind of to the right of my driver's seat, and that does help with the GPS signal to this Humminbird. I don't have that to the Lowrance, but that gets me to another big difference between these two. Gen 4 Humminbird, Gen 3 HDS. This is pre-live units. This is pre-carbon units. This unit right here is quite a few years old at this point in 2024. The processor in this Lowrance is a lot faster than the processor in this Humminbird. Every now and then, it doesn't happen that often, but I can outrun the map on this Humminbird unit, while this Lowrance unit is just steady. It keeps updated. I can, you know, see a good ways out ahead of me. If I'm zoomed in very close, like I've got it zoomed in to 200 feet on the Humminbird, I would probably outrun this unit if I was going full steam down the lake. Whereas this Lowrance, it does not have that issue. The Lowrance is touchscreen. The Helix is not. You have to move it with a cursor. I don't find that being that big of a deal, because at least on the Humminbird, I do have quick buttons here for, here's my map. I press this button, immediately takes me to side scan. I press this button, side scan and down scan. The Lowrance, it's not that big of a difference, but you do have to go back to the menu to be able to pick what you want. So pull up structure scan, takes it a minute. Now obviously we're not on the lake, so I can't show you the differences between the two, but I will say that when it comes to down imaging and side imaging, the Lowrance with a 3-in-1 transducer is great, but the Humminbird is next level on the images that you get. Just scanning places, I can pick up way more subtle details on this Humminbird than I can on the Lowrance. But that's why I have two units here. Although I really love the image and the mapping that the Humminbird and the LakeMaster chip have, I primarily use this Humminbird at my console for side imaging, down imaging. And I primarily use this Lowrance for my mapping. I feel like this is just better suited. I honestly like the image that the Lowrance gives. You can turn off your lines and everything on here. But I will say another cool feature about this Humminbird map is I can go to my map, and you'll see it takes it a minute to load. Now it went to my current location, but I can come to this Humminbird, go down to lake list, and I can pick any lake that is loaded on the LakeMaster chip, and there's a bunch of them. We'll go back over here, we'll go to Carter's. And it'll pull that map back up. I have not figured out a way to do that on this Lowrance. Usually I just have to zoom out and go and find what lake I want. Now, for doing a pre-trip to Eufaula, it was great to be able to pick Eufaula Lake in the Humminbird and sit here and be able to look at a detailed map of how the lake was set up. I could see all the shallow spots, I could see stump fields, I could see all of that, And both of these units have the ability to have an aerial image loaded over the graph itself. I personally, I don't have a need for that. I much prefer just the, you know, show me where land is, show me where water is, show me the river channel. Obviously on Carters, it's not that big of a deal, most places, to know where the river channel is at. But if you go somewhere like Eufaula or, you know, Okeechobee, somewhere like that, it is very important to know where the channel is. One thing on this Lowrance that, you know, is kind of nice, you know, could go one way or the other with the C-map chip, but you can turn your contours off. I haven't really found a need to be able to do that, but you can see the contours on this map are pretty insane. So, like I said, I'm fishing a lake, especially one that I know really well. This is going to have my side imaging and my down imaging on it. This is going to have my mapping. I do have the ability to do down scan, side scan mapping with either unit, but I just prefer the speed that this Lowrance has as far as the load. Now, we'll talk about the units that I have up front. On the front of my boat, I have a Humminbird Helix Gen 3 10-inch unit, and I have a Garmin 126 for Panoptics. Obviously, Lowrance and Humminbird have their own live system now to use, but I prefer the Panoptics for my live, and we'll jump into that. Alright, I kind of want to see if I can show y'all some of the differences here. I'm coming past a little island. If you'll notice, both units, since I'm running side scan, have some interference. Running two different transducers on the same frequency setting. But as we go around this island, if you notice, the Humminbird unit has a lot less interference, and you can see, you can kind of make out individual rocks over here, whereas on this unit it looks more just like smooth bottom. Both of these are set to essentially the same color palette and the same sensitivity, running 455 kilohertz on both units. But to me, I feel like this Humminbird unit just tends to show a lot more. If there was any bait around, there's a little bit of stuff right here, it would definitely show up a little bit better. The Lowrance looks cleaner, but you see a lot less detail on the Lowrance than you do the Humminbird. See, we've got some bait right here on the Humminbird that you can kind of make out. On the Lowrance, you can see it, but it's not as detailed. And like I said, typically, not all the time, but typically the Lowrance has a little bit more interference that shows up than the Humminbird. All right, looking at the two units that I have on the front of my boat, I have a Helix 10, I have a Garmin 126. The Helix 10 on the front deck of my boat, I only use for mapping while I'm fishing. It's got the ability to do everything else that the 12 at the console does, but I use it to map stuff. If I mark a brush pile or anything like that while I'm using side scan at the console, the waypoint will of course show up on this Helix unit. And with the Helix connected to my Ultrex iPilot link, I can tell it to take me to that waypoint, keep me so far off that waypoint with spot lock. That's the only thing that I use that for, and I'll compare depths between it and my LiveScope. Now, my settings on my LiveScope, right now I have it set up to my max distance in forward mode as 50 feet. I play with that every now and then, but typically I leave it set at 50 feet because I'm usually going to be, especially if I'm finesse fishing, I'm going to be within that distance from whatever I'm casting at. I mess with the gain every now and then. Right now it's set at 55%. When we were at Eufaula, it was super dirty water. So I turned that gain down a little bit. Usually I have that gain set anywhere between 57 and 62. But I prefer the Garmin unit over, I've used the Lowrance live system. The Lowrance is very detailed when it comes to, if you're looking at structure, being able to see exactly what that structure is consisted of. You can see a hole in a giant rock under the water, which is pretty cool. But also, one downside that I've noticed to the Lowrance is, for me anyway, it's hard for me to tell if what kind of fish I'm seeing. Am I seeing, you know, a bunch of crappie? Am I seeing a school of bass? I can't typically tell the difference, because most of the time on the Lowrances that I've used, the size of the fish looks the same. Whereas on this Garmin, I can tell. I can look at a school of fish and see, okay, they're the size of a crappie, they're the size of a largemouth, they're the size of a giant catfish. You know, it's a lot easier for me to tell the size of fish on this Garmin than on the Lowrance. Now, I haven't played with the Garmin side scan, Garmin mapping. I haven't used that much to be able to do a comparison, but like I said, I use my Lowrance. Their 2D sonar is great. I think that Lowrance 2D is the best in the business. That being said, I also feel that Humminbird's side imaging and down imaging are the best in the business. I think that Garmin is the best when it comes to live. When it comes to Panoptics, I think Panoptics is better than the Lowrance Live and the Humminbird Live. And that's why I have all three on my boat. Just mainly so I can get experience with all three different systems and platforms. But I also feel like all of them are better at something. And why not, if I'm going to spend a ton of money on graphs, why not have the system that does the best for what I want to use it for? So that's a look at the graphs that I have on my boat. Hopefully the video on the lake, you were able to kind of see some of the differences. I know the sun was glaring on the screens and kind of did the best I could there. But one other thing I forgot to mention about that Lowrance unit is I do have it NEMA'd to my Yamaha show. I can pull up the screen, show the gauges, I can show my engine hours. I've got 415 hours on that show, and that's one thing that I really want to keep track of, is how many hours are actually on that motor, especially as it starts getting up into the higher hours, keep my oil changes fresh and everything like that. Also, I can see water pressure. I can see my Eco GPS fuel economy, which not really accurate or doesn't really matter, but cool little feature. But what graphs are y'all running? You know, I'm a big nerd when it comes to electronics and graphs and how everybody has their boat set up. So drop a comment down below what graphs you're running. I'd appreciate it if you'd like, comment, share the videos. Our last video did way better than what I ever would have expected, and that was awesome. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.